Oh, Shakespeare, you're so Oh, hi! It's a me, Mario! And my buddy Sonic made a pretty good movie. If only we could do that. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm actually a Keon! It's me! Gotcha there for a second. It's not Mario, it's Keon! And we're here to talk about something a little bit bigger than video game movies. But something that video game movies can learn from, which is how to be a good... That's better. How to be a good producer. And some of the smart moves that the Sonic movie made. But to learn more about that, why don't you hit that like, smash that subscribe, and stay tuned to find out. Oh, also spoilers. We're gonna spoil parts of the movie to talk about the smart moves they made in the movie. So if you haven't seen it, go see Sonic the Hedgehog, because we gotta go fast about talking about the movie. That could have been better. That could have been better. So a quick disclaimer for this whole video. This isn't about how to make high art or a masterpiece film, but how to make a movie that general audiences are probably going to enjoy. I really thought that they made some smart choices while making the Sonic movie and adjusting it during its production cycle that ultimately led to the movie that a lot of people are enjoying right now. And I think that's a formula that some newer movies that are coming out can really benefit from. So let's talk about it. So another disclaimer before we go into the smart choices that they made in the movie is that I'm a pretty big Sonic fan. So take anything I say about the Sonic franchise with a grain of salt, because I have a big soft spot for that blue little hedgehog. The first game that I played was in 1996 when I was like 3 years old, which was Sonic 3D Blast on the PC. So if I liked Sonic 3D Blast, I don't think there's anything that Sonic can make that I'm not gonna enjoy. There's nowhere but up from there. So even though I really enjoy Sonic and the cartoons and the comic books and the games, this movie doesn't really capitalize on that. The plot of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie has very little, if nothing, to do with the Sonic the Hedgehog lore. I mean, most things that fans of the games would expect aren't really there. Planet Mobius is barely even present. There are none of Sonic's like anthropomorphic friends that he can talk to. Dr. Robotnik doesn't look like a round Teddy Roosevelt. And Dr. Robotnik isn't putting a bunch of animals into robots for his evil maniacal schemes. And on that note, Sonic isn't even chasing Dr. Robotnik like in every game. Robotnik's chasing him. That's like a complete flip on the oldest formula of the games. That's like rule number 1 for the games. I mean, Sonic and Eggman aren't fighting over the Chaos Emeralds. The Chaos Emeralds aren't even in the movie. Sonic just kind of has this, like, electricity that comes off of him that other people want to harness. In addition, they kind of introduce new characters, like this owl named Longclaw that's supposed to have taken care of Sonic his entire life, and the little rings that we know from the game that when he gets hit, they, like, fly away from him, now have a secondary purpose. In the games, they help you teleport to bonus zones, but instead of doing that, they just let you teleport wherever you want in the movie. And that leads me to the first smart move that the creators of this movie made, which is altering the source material. And now I know that might sound bad to start off with, but there's so much comics and games and TV shows and all of this lore for Sonic the Hedgehog, and that might be good to start off with, but at the same time, you might get bogged down with it. And another movie you probably know of that had a lot of source material but decided to do something slightly different is Iron Man in 2008. There's so much comic books and lore and video games, honestly, that they could have pulled from, and they did use that for inspiration, but they decided to tell their own story that they thought would please an audience, and then sprinkle all those references and backstory from the Marvel Comics in later. And that's a pretty good move. I mean, we can tell now because the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been using that for almost every one of their movies. And that's a really good idea because ultimately, the story or the plot is the backbone of the movie. If you don't have a good plot, then the whole movie's gonna fall apart. And that's where the Sonic movie shines. By altering the source material and having a simple plot, it's easy for them to keep the momentum going and gotta go fast during the movie so that they can slip in some fun jokes and other references later down the line. For example, instead of having Sonic's family and his friends and everything on Mobius, we just have Longclaw the Owl, who's his caretaker mother figure on Mobius, who sends him to Earth to keep him safe. Quick, simple, and effective. Might not be amazing lore, but it gets the movie going. And by keeping it simple, they can do some really interesting things with the story. Honestly, this movie kind of reminded me of the 2017 Power Rangers movie, where that movie cribbed a lot from The Breakfast Club and tried to explore the teenage experience of a bunch of teenagers who now become superheroes and what that might be like. So by keeping that plot simple, they could explore something different that they don't really go into in the Power Rangers movies. That brings me to something I really loved about this movie because it has a lot to do with loneliness. This movie came out on Valentine's Day, a day meant for couples, and they understood the audience coming to see it might not all be in a relationship. So we see that Sonic the Hedgehog, the fastest thing alive, can't outrun loneliness, literally. And that we see that it's important to reach out to your friends and ask people that you trust for help when you need it. I mean, Dr. Robotnik, the only person that's kind of maniacally evil and probably really miserable, only loves robots and hates human beings. Talk about a weird way to twist loneliness, right? So, I thought it was really interesting that they twisted the idea of Sonic the Hedgehog to be kind of the story about loneliness and how it's good to have friends. A really simple idea, but pretty well executed. Can you imagine a video game movie tackling the subject of loneliness like this? Well, it happened, and it was pretty good. And that's what can happen when you have a pretty simple plot. And that leads me to smart move number 2, which is recycling things that people already like. Now that might sound negative, like you're stealing from another movie, but keep in mind that people like what they're familiar with. That's why we're getting spin-offs and reboots and sequels to movies that we've seen over and over and over again, because people like what they know. And since Sonic has some really deep lore that the audience isn't going to know anything about, they simplified it by taking a couple story beats from other movies that are successful. So, for example, we have this non-canonical Longclaw the Owl that sends Sonic to Earth to keep him safe. Why does that sound familiar? Oh, it's because Superman's been doing it for decades. That's basically his backstory, but it's simple enough that it gets the plot going very quickly. Another thing that steals pretty wholesale is the Quicksilver super fast, like slow motion scene from Days of Future Past. Really awesome scene, and this movie does take that wholesale from the movie, where Sonic is going really fast and everybody else looks really slow, and so he can do some shenanigans. So that fits the character pretty well, that Sonic's a little prankster, so if he can go really fast and cause a little bit of havoc, it's something that he would do. So even though it's really similar to the scene in Days of Future Past, fits the character really well. And speaking of Sonic's attitude, the way he acts is really similar to Deadpool's humor in a way. And honestly, when I went through it, I felt like it was like a PG Deadpool, even though Detective Pikachu literally has Ryan Reynolds in it. Sonic's attitude and his ad-libby nature and having a lot of pop culture references made it feel like a movie made for a younger audience that still had to do with this fourth wall breaking kind of character. And finally, the overall format is basically a road trip movie, which is a formula we've seen over and over and over again, but works really well for this movie because we have Sonic and a friend he wants to make, and they start off with a rocky relationship, but over time, it turns into a really nice friendship, honestly. It's really endearing. So that's how this movie takes other elements from other properties and then mixes them together to make something that people are probably gonna like because they like those other properties. So it's a pretty safe bet. Which leads us to smart move number 3, which is after you've taken all the safe bets, let people have some fun with it. The movie has a lot of ad-libs and different things from the comedians that are part of it that brings a lot of energy to the movie. I mean, Jim Carrey's just this ball of energy that's kind of maniacal, but also really fun in a weird way. And also Ben Schwartz, who's Sonic, is really enjoyable to listen to, honestly, and his ad-libs aren't terrible. Some aren't great, but they're not terrible. And on top of all of that, they included some fun references and small little bits that all the Sonic fans are really gonna enjoy. Some of the animations that he had in the original game, as well as like Smash Brothers and other stuff, as well as his shoes and the chili dogs. And in the beginning of the movie, they had some echidnas, so all the fans are like, oh hey, that's Knuckles maybe, who knows. They also even showed in the trailer that at some point in the movie, Dr. Robotnik's gonna have a shaved head and a big old mustache, so in the next movie, he might be that maniacal Dr. Eggman that we're all used to. And spoilers, oh my god, Tails shows up in the post-credit scene, and it was glorious. Oh my, it felt amazing to see. I was like, wow, if they really want to do another movie, they're probably gonna go full force on it. And that's why it's good to have all your safe bets, and then do the crazy stuff so that you can hint at the fact that maybe in the next movie, they'll just go to Mobius, and he's gonna hang out with Tails, and they're gonna be friends, and then we're gonna have the actual Eggman that we all know, and where any of that could go. It's the way that you can have your cake and eat it too, making sure that your investment's safe before you start pushing any of that weird, cool, nerdy stuff. And finally, for smart move number 4, it's understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. A big thing for producers is understanding what your audience wants. And they got a big message about that when they first had the design of Sonic, and then everybody hated it, almost unanimously. So when you get that kind of feedback, you can either do one of two things, which is double down and keep moving forward, or listen to them and make a different judgment. And I really appreciated that they decided to take the time to push back the production by 6 months and allow the time to redo the entire Sonic design. And honestly, it's so much better. I mean, a lot of the movie hinges on these really tight close-ups on Sonic, so I'm glad we didn't have to see that with the old design. And in addition to that, they also have a really great marketing team. I mean, bringing on Jim Carrey is just a safe bet that not only people are going to want to watch the movie, but also, when he did interviews, that became a meme in its own right. It was its own thing outside of the Sonic movie, and that allows for people to see, oh, Jim Carrey's in a new thing? What is it? It's the Sonic movie. I'm gonna go see it. Same thing with Ben Schwartz when he went on a bunch of interviews with video game companies, and that's a way to make sure that the video game fans already kind of like the person that's going to be embodying a character that they've loved for almost 3 decades now. And I'd be a silly guy if I didn't mention the Sonic the Hedgehog social media. They're always trying to pump up the positives while still poking fun at the negatives of either the new games that come out or some of the TV shows or any of that kind of stuff. So that's already a really good asset that the movie had going for it, and they kept putting out more and more content to encourage people to go see the movie. So in conclusion, by creating a simple plot, borrowing from movies people already liked, and letting their team have a little bit of fun by adding some jokes and references here and there, I think the Sonic movie did a really good job of hedging their bets while still making a really enjoyable movie. Now again, huge disclaimer, I really don't think that you or I or anybody in the indie scene should use any of these moves. I just think that they were a smart way for Sega to take its first step into a movie franchise and ensure that they're hopefully going to be able to make a second movie. Unlike the Mario original movie, which I'm glad didn't get a sequel. But legitimately, I would love a second Sonic the Hedgehog movie, just so that they can go in those crazy directions and maybe mess with the Chaos Emeralds, and who knows, Sonic might go supersonic, which would be amazing to see on screen. So, I'm really excited for where they go from here, and I hope that all those safe moves that they made will actually allow them to make a second movie. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please consider subscribing. We do stuff like this all the time, and we love diving into the little things that make movies what they are. And if you really enjoyed this video and thought it was interesting, please consider sharing it with a friend that you think might also enjoy it. And don't forget to like or dislike this video based on what you thought. And tell us your thoughts in the comments. We're always reading them, and just like the people that made the Sonic movie, we're not above criticism. So please feel free to let us know how you feel. And on that note, I'm gonna go make a metal Sonic. I'm gonna shave my head and try for the role of Dr. Eggman in the sequel. Wow, that would be amazing. Oh, wow, that'd be a dream come true. Okay, what do I gotta do? Okay, so first I gotta tie up Jim Carrey, make sure he doesn't do the second movie, and then I gotta shave my head again. That's pretty simple. I'll see you guys later.